from the Mercy One studio.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
And good Thursday morning from the Mercy One studio in West Des Moines. I want to start off the program this morning to give our condolences to our colleague here, Deacon Tony Valdez, who's our program director, and the death of his father, Manuel Valdez, whose funeral is being conducted at this hour at Sacred Heart Church in West Des Moines. May eternal rest to Manuel, and may the perpetual light from above shine upon him and all the faithfully departed. And again, our condolences to Tony and to his wife Eileen and to the entire family there. And unfortunately, we are here, so we can't be at the funeral. But I was at the funeral home last night, and it was a overflow crowd, I guess is how you could describe it. So a lot of friends of Tony and his father.
He sounds like he was a much-loved member of our community.
He is. Mm-hmm. Yep. He was.
It'll be a beautiful funeral, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And
Monsignor Bagnano is handling that. And
he's presiding?
He's presiding, so we know that they are in good hands with Monsignor.
Yes. Nobody is as heartfelt as Monsignor Bagnano, for sure.
Right. Right.
A contributor here at the station,
That's
too.
Right.
People may
That's
know
right.
him. And sometimes we see him on Saturday mornings with
we do.
prayer on one of the network channels here
and
locally.
Sometimes I'm in our chapel at St. Augustine's, and he will pop in for a few minutes, kneel there, say a couple of prayers, and then out to continue his jog or whatever.
Yes, he was very instrumental in putting that chapel.
I know he was. He was a
Blessed
former
Sacrament
pastor
in that
right.
chapel, and helping make it perpetual. It's a beautiful service for our community.
Yeah. So anyway, our condolences to
absolutely and prayers
Tony
for
and
them.
his family.
Yeah.
All right.
So, crazy news week.
Oh, my goodness.
I love our guests this week. I'll be anxious to see how this is coming through. We have a couple of different guests, but before we get to that, I noticed that a physical education teacher from Virginia expressed his opinions about how he loves his students in his school, and by expressing that and showing his religious beliefs at that public hearing and expression, he was fired from his job. But a judge upheld his suit, and he gets to keep his job.
Ordered him back, right.
That's right.
And we're going to discuss something very similar to that next week with our old friend Brad Dacus, a case similar in Oregon. That's just starting, and we'll have him fill us in on some of that. But yeah, it's a wacky world out there anymore. You disagree with the political orthodoxy of the woke crowd, and you can be terminated, canceled, lose your job.
Well, that's true. But more than that, it's a hostility towards people of faith.
Oh, absolutely.
And which is the basis for having this radio program.
That's right.
We wouldn't have this show without that kind of growing hostility.
And you want to talk about hostility to faith, where do we get to our second guest today, Robert Muise from the American Freedom Law Center, and we talk about that case up in Genoa Charter Township in Michigan. That's another case where they're telling this Catholic group that wants to put up a chapel that would take about 5 of 40 acres of wooded land that they have, about 600 feet from the street. They're telling them, no, you can't put up that chapel. And by the way, those Stations of the Cross you have up there, you got to take them down.
Well, I'm anxious to talk to Robert Muise because I read the case and there's so much precedent of secular types of establishments
very similar
throughout the community that have been allowed that this is clearly a religious discrimination. And I'll be anxious to hear his...
And I want to hear what Ryan Bangert from the Alliance Defending Freedom is going to say about the appeal that may be... We know there's going to be an appeal for this case from the
we
College
talked
of
about
the
this.
Ozarks.
The College
right.
of the Ozarks has dormitories that are strictly single-sex dormitories.
Right.
They have no co-ed facilities on their campus. They're a Christian-based school. And, the Biden administration, President Biden himself signed an executive order within the first couple of days.
Saying that basically the fair housing law, the federal agencies have to interpret the word sex to include gender reassignment and transgenderism and all
even
this
just
other
identity
and gender
preference.
identity and preferences. And so that's what the College of the Ozarks was fighting. That first of all, this isn't a valid order. You can't do this. You can't change the terms of the law. And the judge, an Obama appointee judge, turned him down. Said, no, you got to allow trans women into your dorms,
into your male dorms,
or into your female dorms, and shower spaces and things like that. So that's a low blow, and it comes to us courtesy of our devout Joseph Biden and federal judge appointed by Obama.
Oh, I wondered about the judge. Well, good. Then I'm looking forward to having that discussion with Ryan Bangert from ADF today.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. All right, we have a prayer to open us up.
It sounds like we need a prayer for peace as we begin, so we'll use the prayer from Pope Benedict. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world. Peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of this earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred. Strengthen us in hope and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we will be right back in a few minutes with Ryan Bangert from the Alliance Defending Freedom.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Blessman International. Blessman International partners with volunteers and donors to provide sustainable programs for children in South Africa by leading 12-day all-inclusive experiences, sharing the heart of Christ with vulnerable children in South Africa. Teams are forming to do something significant in an African child's life. Learn more at blessmaninternational.org. Thank you to Blessman International for their support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and the Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
This is Bo Bonner.
And I'm Dr. Bud Marr from the Uncommon Good.
Mercy College provides unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules. Since 1899, Mercy College has been transforming students into healthcare professionals. Guided by Catholic values, our faculty put classroom theory into practice. Students are prepared for roles in service and leadership throughout their own careers.
Learn more at mchs.edu.
Thank you, Big Red Q Quick Print, for underwriting the sports report. Family owned and operated since 1980, Big Red Q Quick Print is a full-service print shop ready to help you with all your printing needs with speed and accuracy. Forms, manuals, brochures, letterhead, envelopes, business cards, custom invitations, design, and bindery. Big Red Q Quick Print, located across from Merle Hay Mall. Online at bigredq-desmoines.com. Big Red Q Quick Print. We make printing easy.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning provided by Bell Construction.
Bell Construction is a roofing company. They specialize in residential re-roofs, like commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494. Bell Construction.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Faith on Trial provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production. And we're back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Catholic Radio. And with us right now is Ryan Bangert, who is Senior Counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom. Ryan, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Certainly. Thank you for joining us here. I want to talk a little bit about this case you're involved in, which is the College of the Ozarks, and what is going on there. I know there was just a court ruling that I'm sure you were not happy with. But if you can, for our listeners who may not be familiar with what's going on there, if you can kind of give us the elevator story about how this case came about and what the legal ramifications are.
You bet. Well, College of the Ozarks is a religious school in Missouri, and it provides a distinctly Christian education. And that Christian faith is integral to how the school operates. Its vision is to develop citizens of Christ-like character who are educated, hardworking, and patriotic. That's what the school does. And as part of those beliefs, College of the Ozarks holds to a belief that biological sex is not changeable. And the school operates its dormitories according to those beliefs by separating the dorms into men and women's dorms. It's done that for over 100 years. And so this is a fundamental part of how the school operates. And the problem we have with what the Biden administration is doing is the administration is trying to punish College of the Ozarks and schools like it that hold those types of religious beliefs simply because they hold traditional Christian fundamental beliefs about marriage and biological sex. And what the administration is doing is telling these types of schools, look, if a student who is suffering from gender dysphoria wants to live in a dorm that is inconsistent with their biological sex, you have to do that. You have to give that student access to that dormitory. So that would mean if a male student shows up at school and is suffering from gender dysphoria, wants access to the female dorms, according to the Biden administration, the school has to let them into the female dorms. And that's why we brought this lawsuit, to prevent that from happening, to prevent the administration from forcing schools like College of the Ozarks from violating their fundamental faith, their fundamental beliefs.
Now, it seems to me they're basing what they're doing on an interpretation of the Federal Fair Housing Act that they want the agencies in government to enforce, not necessarily the words of the law, but their interpretation of the words. How does that work?
That's exactly right. It's a pretty dramatic example of government overreach. The Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. It's never told Christian schools and universities that you have to admit students suffering from gender dysphoria to a dormitory that's not consistent with their biological sex. That's never been part of the Fair Housing Act. But the Biden administration has really come in with this commitment to a radical agenda of really promoting these notions. And it's not just in the space of gender dysphoria. It's across the board. That they're pushing critical race theory. They're pushing really a woke agenda. And this is just part and parcel of all of that. And so as part of what they've done, they've tried to use the administrative state, the agency process, to reinterpret and really redefine what the Fair Housing Act means. And they have said the word sex now encompasses sexual orientation, gender identity, and prohibits discrimination on that basis. And that's what we claim in our lawsuit, is that act of reinterpretation is illegal.
Now, it seems to me that there have been attempts in Congress that have failed, but to amend the Federal Fair Housing Act to include those terms, but none of those proposals have ever passed.
That's right. And obviously we all know about the Equality Act, which is the latest attempt to force that kind of interpretation through Congress, but it still hasn't passed yet, and it still faces some hurdles. But the Biden administration is not willing to wait to see how the legislative process goes. They want to force this agenda immediately. And so that's why they're using the administrative state to do it. And the law doesn't allow that. They didn't put this change through notice and comment to the public. The change contradicts the text of the Fair Housing Act and how it's been applied historically. So those are big problems with what the administration is doing, and it's anti-democratic.
And I think one thing that sometimes when we look at the issue and we have a gut wrench about it, we don't look at some of the legal niceties that we can argue too, which is that the Biden administration did not go through the normal procedure that's outlined in the Administrative Procedures Act to create this, amendment to their interpretation of the law. Normally, I think, and you can explain this, the Administrative Procedures Act calls for the agency to propose a rule and then to give time for comment, notifying everybody that we're proposing the rule, and then you have time to comment on it. None of that was done in this situation.
That's exactly right. And when you talk about the gut wrench, I think most people at their gut level believe the government should not force young women to share private spaces, dormitories, locker rooms, showers with males. And that sentiment was never given an opportunity to be expressed because the Biden administration did not follow the requirements of the Administrative Procedure Act, which, as you correctly point out, requires for rule changes, for legislative rule changes, the administration has to provide notice to the public, provide a definitive opportunity for comment, and then take those comments into account. None of that happened.
Right. So, Ryan, your suit was preemptive. There was not any individual who had tried to have accommodations under this ruling. How do we protect the rights of the men and women that are in the single-sex dorms? Do they have rights under this administrative rule?
The rule doesn't speak a word about those individuals or their rights. And that's another big problem with this rule is it doesn't really take into account, at all the interests of women in women's dorms and keeping them safe and ensuring that they don't have to live with biological males. And again, that's part of the problem here. This rule change was never put through notice and comment. None of those stories, none of those interests, none of those concerns were even considered. It was just rammed through.
And you mentioned that this ruling invokes some kind of a punishment against the schools that don't follow or don't allow a gender dysphoria individual to live in these dorms. What kinds of punishments or consequences are listed in the ruling?
Most directly, a school that violates the Fair Housing Act and is determined to have violated it can be subject to fairly substantial financial penalties, which could stack up to six figures. There are also some criminal penalties, some narrowly targeted criminal penalties, if the institution takes certain actions. Now, the biggest problem, of course, is the federal government could just continue to fine colleges like College of the Ozarks indefinitely until they change their policies or shut down their dormitories.
So would they have to actually have somebody try to consider housing under this ruling before they're fined, or can they be fined if they just outright say, we'll never allow this?
Well, that's a very good question, and something that the statutory scheme anticipates is federal money that flows to private actors who serve as testers. And these private actors can approach a school like College of the Ozarks, request housing inconsistent with their sex, and if denied, that tester could then report that to an enforcing agency. And even without any intent by the tester to actually live in the dormitory, that can count as a violation. So it's a fairly harshly enforced rule, and these testers have the ability to do this.
Wow, I find that very uncomfortable.
What I find most uncomfortable is the ruling from the court. Why don't you explain, if you can, if there's a way to explain what the court said when you filed your action for a protection from this order?
So the order was grounded on a finding that there's no standing, and that's a very technical legal concept. The easiest way to explain it is the court said this rule doesn't really change the ball game. And you, College of the Ozarks, haven't suffered any bad consequences yet because you haven't had an enforcement action taken against you. And so this lawsuit in the court's mind was too early. What the court is effectively telling the school is, you need to wait until an enforcement action is brought against you and you are facing real, potentially catastrophic consequences, then you can come back and bring your lawsuit. And that's just not how the law works. The law allows institutions like College of the Ozarks and others to bring pre-enforcement challenges. It's very clear. The Supreme Court has blessed these types of challenges, and for good reason, because institutions whose religious liberties are under threat, and institutions who are being threatened with enforcement by invalid rules, should have the ability to challenge those rules before the institution is threatened with an existential crisis.
Oh, the ACLU does that all the time, and they never seem to have a problem with it.
Right. Exactly. And that's why these types of pre-enforcement challenges are available, because the courts have clearly held that you don't have to wait until you are in extremis, so to speak, with a threat to your constitutional rights before you have an ability to vindicate those rights in court. And so we're taking this case up on appeal. We are hopeful that the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is based there in St. Louis, Missouri, will see things differently, and we're going to keep fighting.
So it seems to me that this ruling would be even more important given the fact that there was no public comment allowed on the proposed rule.
That's right.
This is their one chance to speak up and make it and show the problems with it.
It seems to me they got a technicality right there. They could have just, disposed of the rule very easily, saying this was not adopted correctly. And
are there plans for any public hearing on the rule?
Well, not as yet, because the federal government doesn't believe they're required to do that, and they've taken that position throughout this litigation. And part of what they have said, which I think is very interesting and should be pointed out, is the federal government has been arguing that they were required to interpret the Fair Housing Act in this way by the Supreme Court's decision in Bostock. And
that's an employment law, yeah.
That's exactly right. Bostock was a decision from the Supreme Court last term that was interpreting Title VII, which is the federal civil right portion of the Federal Civil Rights Act that prohibits discrimination in employment. Completely different than Title IX, completely different than Title VI. I mean, this is not the same. In fact, the Supreme Court in Bostock even said, we are not adjudicating questions about access to showers and locker rooms in intimate facilities. And yet, the Biden administration took that ruling, ran with it, and decided on its own that Bostock should apply to the Fair Housing Act. And in our view, and I think we're correct, that's a pretty significant change to the law. That's not simply applying Bostock faithfully to the Fair Housing Act. That's making new law. And that's part of the fight here is the appropriate application of that decision.
You know, when you say this is a very big piece of legislation, very broad when you talk about a federal housing act. I mean, it includes people trying to rent apartments. And obviously, I would agree that whatever their gender dysphoria might be, they should not be denied an apartment in a public facility based on that. But so it's very broad. Is there any way that the rule could exclude certain things like college dormitories?
Well, that's a great question. And you're absolutely right in that no one wants to see individuals suffering with gender dysphoria denied housing and access to housing. At the same time, no one wants to see universities like College of the Ozarks that have religious-based policies have to compromise those beliefs. And that's part of the push and pull of the rulemaking process done correctly, with notice and comment, giving an opportunity to the public, all the interested stakeholders, to provide feedback to the rulemakers so that these nuances and these interests can be appropriately weighed, accommodated, and balanced. The problem, of course, here is none of that happened. None of that happened because the notice and comment process was not followed. And so that the point that you make is really indicative of the difficulty and problem with the way the federal government just rushed this rule through without giving it much forethought and trampled on religious freedoms along the way.
It seems like that's a hallmark of the Biden administration, is you get an idea, you put it down on paper, you sign an order, and that's the end of it. You expect everybody to just follow it.
Right. So many of those executive orders just can't pull the carpet out from under all kinds of entities and organizations and individuals throughout the country this year.
I think there's as many executive orders from Biden right now as there are dollars in the deficit. Yeah.
Anyway,
it's really been remarkable to watch the flood of administrative rulemaking and executive orders that have been pouring out of the administration during the first 100+ days, and this is just part of that.
Yeah,
and you're exactly right about that.
Yeah. So, how do we find out more about what is going on and follow you?
The best place to follow us is on our website, ADF Legal. That's ADF Legal altogether, no spaces or periods, .org. We have case pages up on our website that you can go to and learn about all the cases that we're litigating, including College of the Ozarks. And so that's a great way to engage with us.
And it's a good place to go if you have a problem and you'd like ADF assistance. And I know also it's a good place to go if you have some spare change and you want to make a donation to ADF, who does all of what you do pro bono for the particular client you're representing.
All true.
Wonderful.
Very good. Well, thank you, Ryan, for joining us today. We certainly appreciate the information, and we'll be talking to you again as this case winds its way up, because obviously there's going to be an appeal, and there may be an appeal of that appeal. So
right, and it affects so many colleges.
Well,
and
there's no religious exemption in this order. So anyway, Ryan Bangert, Senior Counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom, thank you again for joining us, and like I say, we'll be in touch later.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Certainly. Thank you. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Blessman International. Blessman International partners with volunteers and donors to provide sustainable programs for children in South Africa by leading a 12-day, all-inclusive experience sharing the heart of Christ with vulnerable children in South Africa. Teams are forming to do something significant in an African child's life. Learn more at blessmaninternational.org. That's blessmaninternational.org. Thank you, Blessman International, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning provided by Bell Construction.
Bell Construction is a roofing company. They specialize in residential re-roofs, light commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494. Bell Construction.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and the Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
This is Bo Bonner.
And I'm Dr. Bud Marr from the Uncommon Good.
Mercy College provides unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules. Since 1899, Mercy College has been transforming students into healthcare professionals. Guided by Catholic values, our faculty put classroom theory into practice. Students are prepared for roles in service and leadership throughout their own careers.
Learn more at mchs.edu.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Here's your forecast on Iowa Catholic Radio. Sunny, hot, and humid through the afternoon. We'll be hitting about 94 on our high temperature. Overnight looks clear with our low near 72, and then we have a cold front moving in tomorrow, some showers and thunderstorms, and our high around 90. Fair for the weekend. The weather is brought to you by Divine Treasures, a Catholic book and gift store serving the Des Moines community for over 25 years. I'm meteorologist Steve Hamilton on Iowa Catholic Radio.
And you're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Robert Muise is the co-founder and senior counsel of the American Freedom Law Center, and he is joining us right now with a case out of Michigan, which Gina and I have both read the complaint for, and it sounds like a real windinger here.
I'm not a lawyer, but this is quite a case.
Robert, first of all, welcome to the program again. We are certainly glad to have you back. And if you can you give us kind of the thumbnail version of what is going on in, where is it, Genoa Charter Township, something like that?
Yes, great to be with you again. And it's a pretty, I think it's a pretty strong case. Obviously, I'm the author.
I read it and I fell out of my chair thinking, what in the world is going on here?
Right, and so I represent the Catholic Healthcare International, and its president, and they had property, 40 acres, a 40-acre rural lot that was donated to them by the diocese. The diocese had purchased the property with the intention of potentially building a church on the property, a large, much larger church, one that would assist the community. But because of the downturn in the economy and so forth, they decided, it wouldn't be supported there. So they donated the property to Catholic Healthcare International, who has plans to build a very modest chapel, the St. Padre Pio Adoration Chapel. It's only going to be a 95-seat chapel, 39 parking spaces, and on this, beautiful wooded 40-acre lot, they're going to have trails. It's going to be a prayer campus. One of the trails is going to have the Stations of the Cross, and they might have like a Divine Mercy trail. You can pray the Divine Mercy chaplet at different stations. They have this beautiful image of Our Lady on a mural wall. It's a 6-foot by 6-foot image of Our Lady, and so they're planning on building this. And the township was giving them such a hard time. Eventually, they submitted their application, and to bear in mind, in most zoning areas, and you'll find a lot of churches in residential areas because that's where they typically are located. And in virtually, every state, every jurisdiction, they're an allowable use in a residential district, meaning you have to get a special approval land use application, a permit for that. And those are typically a matter of course. You just have to submit different documentation, environmental impact statement, traffic studies if necessary. So they're not technically a permitted use, but they're an allowable use. And the problem is a lot of these zoning ordinances have these amorphous standards, like is it harmonious with the community and so forth. And, those things are very subjective. And too often the townships have been discriminating against the building of places of religious worship in the different areas. And so Congress, back in, I think it was 2000, passed a federal statute called the Religious Land Use Institutionalized Persons Act, and RILUPA is what it's referred to. And so if they have a system of zoning that causes a substantial burden on religious exercise, then the government must have a compelling interest that's narrowly tailored, meaning they must satisfy strict scrutiny, which oftentimes is the case that they cannot. Well, here, plainly, they're only developing on 5 acres of 40 acres. It's a very modest development. Interestingly enough, even in this very zoning district they're in, it permits public parks. And just 3 miles from this prayer campus, which, you could call it a religious park if you want, the city has their own park on 38 acres, even less acreage, with 200-plus parking spaces, which all kinds of facilities and buildings and accessory buildings and everything all over the property. So this is plainly a case of religious discrimination. So not only a violation of the federal statute, but also the First and 14th Amendments, which protect religious institutions and people of faith from this type of religious discrimination. So we filed a lawsuit on June 2nd. We just served it this week, and so they'll have 21 days to file a formal response. Hopefully, if they have lawyers who who will look at this objectively, will advise their clients that they need to resolve this thing sooner rather than later. but I wouldn't hold my breath. Our dealings with the township have not been very good. In fact, even after they denied the application to build this chapel, they ordered my client to take down these 14 Stations of the Cross, which are small. They're in the middle of the woods. Nobody can see them. You have to trespass on the property to go there and remove the mural wall. And my client said, no, we're not going to do it. And so that's part of this battle. So it's going to be a battle. I wish they were more clear-minded about this and would realize that they made a huge mistake. But they may have to pay for it literally at the end of the day.
Yeah. Now, when I read the lawsuit, your complaint that you filed, and the press release that went with it and everything, I had a picture in my mind of several retreat centers that I've been at that are kind of in the woods, and where people can go out and pray the rosary. There's Stations of the Cross out there. They're not very big, Stations of the Cross. They're walking paths you can go through and just commune with nature and God. And that's what this sounded like to me. And why in the world this township doesn't want it there, I don't understand that. I don't understand what reasons they would have had to have given to you as to why they're turning you down.
There are no reasons that are based in fact. Like, for example, one of the things they put in the minutes of the meeting that it was denied because of the increase in traffic. Well, again, there's only 39 parking spaces. I mean, that's hardly an increase in traffic. And the very road that this property is located on in the township, we pulled all the traffic studies for the past 10 years from the road commission, and from years, I forget, it was somewhere like around 2010 to like 2014, the average number of cars along that road was like 5,000. And then right around, I think it was 2013, 2014, they built an interchange earlier along the road, and so that cut the traffic dramatically down to 2,000. Well, if this road was able to support 5,000 cars just a few years ago, and that was fine with the township, and now there's only about 2,000 cars, and you only talk about 39 parking spaces, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the numbers don't even add up. And in fact, the impact, when you look, the road commission, reviews the plans, and other consultants review the plans, and they concluded that a traffic study wasn't even necessary because of the low impact of what they were, the very modest construction that they were building. They're not building, unlike the township who builds a public park with 200 plus parking spaces. This is a very modest. Think about a 95-seat chapel. That is small. I mean, that's a very small adoration chapel, and they're only developing 5 acres of 40 acres. They're saying it's not harmonious with the agricultural and rural surrounding. Of course it is. It's absolutely harmonious with it. I couldn't imagine, not wanting this 40-acre property to be developed in this manner. What they rather have, a giant pig farm, which is permitted on this property, because it's zoned residential and agricultural. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I will say under the, when you look at the public comments, and a lot of the neighbors were complaining about it because they don't want anything there on this property. Well, too bad. I mean, it's not like you can, deny people the right to use their own property, particularly for religious worship. But there was quite a bit of anti-Catholic sentiment that was expressed during these township meetings and on the, in social media and everything else against this, against Catholic Healthcare International. And one of the other things, and this was one of the straw man arguments that's been made constantly, is that they're going to build a hospital here. Well, CHI, Catholic Healthcare International, does intend to eventually build a hospital, but not on this property. This is, and it's interesting, Cardinal Burke came out just recently and blessed the stations, and they had a beautiful mass out there, and he's very intimately involved with the work of CHI. And he made the point, look, this is the foundation of the other work they're going to do. The foundation for they're hoping to someday have a medical school to train Catholic doctors and have a Terry Schiavo home, or a place where people who are brain injured can get the proper treatment, unlike what Terry received, which is basically a death sentence. Mm-hmm. And they want to build a Catholic hospital. So they have all these very broad plans, but not for this property. This property is going to be their foundation for prayer, because everything else will come from that prayer once you get the prayer foundation set. And so there was all these lies about, well, they're going to add a hospital, and it's like, no, I mean, and it's not even part of the application that they submitted. and it's not zoned for that. So you had all these ridiculous arguments that people were making. To me, they were straw man arguments or red herrings that they just want to deny this prayer campus. And it is shocking to me, 40 acres and just have this small little chapel and these prayer trails, keeping the wooded nature of the lot. Only 5 acres of 40 acres was going to be developed. How is that not harmonious with the particular neighborhood? And by the way, about 2 miles up one way and a couple miles the other way are two big Protestant churches that are right along the same road. And it just doesn't make sense to say that this is not harmonious with the property, or that there's a traffic issue, or there's any type of environmental impact whatsoever. In fact, they accommodated every request that the Planning Commission made, and the Planning Commission approved this, by the way.
That's
what had to go through the Planning Commission, right. and had to present and they had to go back and forth on the plans, talk with their consultants. The Planning Commissioners are the experts on the zoning, and they approved it. And then it had to go to the township for the final approval, and it was the township board that eventually denied it. But they were even willing to minimize the use of the bell on the chapel, even though there's nothing that's required under the zoning ordinances or the sound ordinances or anything else, just to appease the neighbors and everybody else. Look, we'll only ring the bell during certain times, during the Angelus at noon and at the beginning of a Mass. But they've made so many different accommodations, and then ultimately, they got the slap in the face and said no. And so we had no choice. And there have been people complaining, well, why don't you just work with the township? Why'd you have to sue them? It's like, are you kidding me? We've been working with the township and the engineers for months and months and months at great expense to CHI. Having these engineers, come in and develop the plans and change the plans and change the plans again and change the plans again, that costs money. I mean, it's been a huge expense to them. And now we had no choice but to have to file this federal lawsuit.
So, Robert, through the last course of 12 to 14 months, we've watched throughout the country where rules apply differently to religious organizations versus secular organizations. And so as I read through this suit, I noticed that, I think I read it right, and maybe you can correct me, but very close proximity to this property, there's a public park that has a comparable arrangement, just not religious. 200 parking spots, facility, I'm assuming some kind of a shelter, and then there's a walking trail with poetry stands throughout the trail. Would be designed very similar, I would guess, to a rosary walk. To having something so comparable and secularly approved, does that help your case?
Absolutely it does, because they refer to them as comparators. And actually you're kind of blending two. There were two separate ones. You have the Township Park, which I'd mentioned, which is only, I think it's 3 miles away on 38 acres, so 2 less acres, 200 plus parking spots, accessory buildings, has a walking trail and so forth. But there's also, within that same area, is this poetry walk, where you walk along these trails, and it's on a physician's office. These trails, and they have different sculptures and poetry, and it's like a poetry / art walk. You also have this trail for children. They can walk on and stop and read these stories about this children's story about a lion. I mean, it's just and those things are very those things are important to point out when you have these comparators where they permit secular uses which are quite similar to the religious use, but then they're denying the religious use. I mean, that's all evidence of religious discrimination. So those facts are important. And if you notice on the complaint, and I kind of had to throw this thing, if you look at the Station of the Cross, it's on a cedar pole. They go into this. They actually are removable, and it's the icon for that particular station is it might be 12 inches by 12 inches. They have birdhouses on properties throughout the township that are big on poles that are bigger than the Station of the Cross. Right, and it's just, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You can't have the Station of the Cross with a flat 12 inch by 12 inch icon on a pole, but you got these giant birdhouses, on private property. So, and the other thing is, why do you have to get permission, right, to put a religious display on your private property that somebody's going to pray to, right? We're not even talking about, with sign ordinances. They're obviously there, or typically there, to minimize visual blight, right? I appreciate some of the, you go into some of these newer developments, the signs are usually lower, smaller. You're not hit with this, cacophony of these ugly signs when you go through some of these older, industrial parks and so forth. I understand that they're signing, but to have a private religious display in the woods that nobody can see unless they come out to trespass, that somehow the government should even have any authority whatsoever to regulate that? I mean, I have religious statutes on my property. I have, Mary up front. I have St. Francis on the back, and some other. What, I got to get a permit from the town, from the city to say I can put this religious statue on my private property? I mean, this is going too far.
The lawsuit is asking, obviously, for what normally is asked for in a lawsuit like this, attorney's fees and nominal damages. And I'm wondering about the individuals who voted against this, and especially this officer, Stone, I think is her name, that is enforcing all of this. Is there any going to be any effort to hold these people responsible in their individual capacities outside of their official capacities? In other words, go ahead.
Yeah, the ordinance officer, Ms. Stone, she was the one whose name appeared on all these letters about removing the signage and the religious symbols and so forth. She was sued in her individual capacity.
Okay.
The township board, they act as a collective board and they act on behalf of the township. Their liability, as it were, will happen at the ballot box, right? When these guys, that's this kind of nature of how this is, how you can bring a lawsuit. That township board acts collectively on behalf of the township. And the ordinance officer acted individually on her own behalf.
Okay.
And so that's why it's their liability issues are slightly different. But it's like, a police officer working for, that works for the town. Obviously, a town might have a town board or even a department and so forth. And if if an individual police officer unlawfully arrests somebody, he can be held liable. And if it was done pursuant to, a policy of the township, then the township's liable. You don't have individuals that might separately be liable. So, but the liability for the township and these, the members of the township board will be at the ballot box.
All right. Well, we'll be following this suit, and I'm interested to see how their township attorneys, advise them in following a lot of these cases around the country. My gut reaction is they're going to try and hold firm and force you to go through the procedures of having the lawsuit and getting a decision from the court. But anyway, we will be following this, and we'll check back with you. If somebody wants to follow on their own, how do they get a hold of the American Freedom Law Center?
Well, the best way is go to our website, AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org. And you can even sign up for email alerts when something important happens in a case. We typically will send out alert to people who've signed up, but we try to keep things updated on our website as to major issues. There's a case page typically too that you can follow different filings and stuff on the case. But the best place to go is to our website, AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org.
And I'm presuming that somebody that wants to make a donation to your organization can do so there.
They can, and thank you for asking. We are, we're mentioning that we're a 501c3, and we're representing Catholic Healthcare International pro bono, which means for the good. So
right.
we're not charging them for our attorney's fees. We hope to recover those from the township. But yes, we're doing this pro bono, and everything we do is from donations. We appreciate anybody who wants to support us. You can go to our website, secure online donation there if you'd like.
Very good. Thank you very much, Robert. We'll be back with you and follow up on this. Thank you. Thank you again. Robert Muise is co-founder and senior counsel for the American Freedom Law Center. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning provided by Bell Construction.
Bell Construction is a roofing company. They specialize in residential re-roofs, like commercial jobs, and have the experience to meet all of your roofing needs with personal service. With Bell Construction, the owner will come to your home or place of business in person to inspect and ensure the quality of work that you deserve. They pride themselves in working with you on a personal basis and making sure you are satisfied. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494. Bell Construction.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and the Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
This is Bo Bonner.
And I'm Dr. Bud Marr from the Uncommon Good.
Mercy College provides unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules. Since 1899, Mercy College has been transforming students into healthcare professionals. Guided by Catholic values, our faculty put classroom theory into practice. Students are prepared for roles in service and leadership throughout their own careers.
Learn more at mchs.edu.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Catholic Women Now provided in part by Permar Security, providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. Permar Security is a Catholic-owned family business supplying security systems, access control systems, video surveillance, fire alarm systems, and video doorbells. All alarm systems are monitored out of their monitoring center located in the state of Iowa. Permar Security, 515-244-5660, permarsecurity.com.
Thank you, Dental Associates, for underwriting Dowling Catholic Sports 365. With over 40 years' experience, Dental Associates is a group dental practice with the mission of promoting optimum health and well-being to all patients, providing preventative, restorative, and cosmetic dentistry for the entire family. Message underwritten by Dr. Kenton Gleichman, Dr. Steve Karbaka, and Dr. Ben Nagel. Dental Associates, addressing your smile, needs, and dreams. Online at DesMoines-DentalAssociates.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and John Leonetti in the Morning is provided by Five Sons Naturescapes. Five Sons Naturescapes is a Catholic veteran-owned family company providing premium outdoor landscaping, clean up and restore outdoor living space with retaining walls, privacy fencing, pergolas, paver sidewalks, and patios. Issues with soil settling and water around the foundation and yard? Five Sons Naturescapes can grade and install drainage tile to help. Five Sons Naturescapes online at fivesonsnaturescapes.com.
And we're back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Gina, two very interesting cases today, neither of which should be at the point that they're at now.
Well, my overview of today's stories is that they both lack a serious amount of common sense.
Right.
You know, it's people sticking to their guns and pushing agendas and not taking a look at the consequences of being right or wanting it their way and lacking any kind of common sense or compromise.
Mm-hmm. And there certainly is in both of these cases an animus against people of religion.
Right. The rights of, both cases,
mm-hmm.
the rights of people of faith are offended by these situations.
Yeah, and even people of no faith ought to be offended because what this says is that your personal beliefs don't matter to us. We're gonna force you to do what we want you to do.
So you can see the domino effect
mm-hmm.
of these kinds of activities. Once they begin to win against people of faith, they will come into every home and govern and oversee everything that you do. And we all know that just leads to socialism and Marxism and the rest.
And we're on the way there, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, based on these, and we all know that this is a year where government agencies and entities have felt the power, the effect of their power. They had so much ability to make decisions that weren't based on the involvement of their communities and their voters. So and then of course the pendulum needs to swing back.
The tangent to that is that there are a lot of independent, non-governmental actors that are doing the same thing. You look at the social media giants. You look at a number of businesses that are doing their own version of cancel culture. This is spreading, and it should be scary to everyone out there listening that these things like this can happen.
Well, and I just have to say that the Alliance for Defending Freedom, who we had on today, and the American Freedom Law Center, without them, I'm afraid the erosion of religious rights would be huge.
That's right, and that's why we mention them as a pro bono organization that requires a certain amount of financial support from the public to keep those things going. And they do a tremendous job. Both these organizations and others like it. We're going to have Brad Dacus on next week from the Pacific Justice Institute. Same thing out there. He does tremendous work, and they deserve our support. So
well, and both of these organizations in our stories today, in our cases today, represent two very beautiful institutions. Catholic Health Initiatives Foundation. You and I at the break were talking about all the different rosary parks that we have visited in our lifetime, and they're very quiet. I can't imagine a better use for that property in that part of Michigan. It's in a rural western community west of Detroit. I'm sure once that structure would be placed on the property, their neighbors would be very happy with it.
Oh yeah, I mean that's an ideal neighbor for you.
I would say
it's an ideal neighbor. But
exactly, and the same thing with the College of the Ozarks. What a beautiful, peaceful institution. All
right, we're getting the signal here that we're just about out of time. Let's finish with our prayer. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls.
Amen.
Amen. For Gene and myself, thank you for listening. Join us next week for another edition of Faith on Trial. Until then, have a blessed and peaceful week.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial, with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial, Thursdays at 10 a.m. on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.